Welcome back. Thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Still growing this channel. Today I'm doing a couple of things all over the place. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the wheels off of the Army truck, disassemble the bead locks, and vacuum the balance beads out of them. I don't like them. I'll tell you why later. Second thing I'm going to do on the Army truck is replace the wheel studs on the rear. The rear wheel studs only have about a 1/2 inch of thread. I've run into some issues with the studs and the lug nuts that I was using, so I am going to go ahead and pony up some time and money and put in a longer stud in the rear so that I have more surface area on those wheel studs. I'm going to pull the bead locks apart, suck all the beads out, put them back together, and then have them balanced traditionally. Did decide to kill two birds with one stone while I have the wheel off today. I'm going to put the longer wheel studs in this now that I have some. I just feel a little more comfortable with that since I have the now higher quality, longer acorn lug nuts. I'm going to try these without balancing them at all, see how much vibration's in them. On my old buggy, or Jeep buggy, I guess it was, I didn't balance them and they were actually pretty decent. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting them to need to be balanced, but I can assure you the balance beads were not the way to go on this particular application. What I was running into is if you were going 40 miles an hour, it was fine. If you slowed down to 30, it shook for, 100 yards until they found their new balance point. If you went faster, same thing. They'd shake until they found a new balance point. But the real headache was I was driving a windy road up one of the canyons, and every curve you go around, you're speeding up, slowing down, and this thing was just basically shaking for 30 miles, and it was really irritating. So enough of the balance beads. You can see the longer studs are about a 1/2 inch longer. I'm getting about that much in the lug nut. A little better off with a little more surface area. So I'm gonna show you how you could do rears while they're on the vehicle. The fronts, if you do those, you'll have to take the hub off. On the rear of a GM full float, you can do this because there's enough room to get the stud out. If you do it on the front, you're gonna have to pull the rotor and hub. But I just take an old kingpin, any kind of a drift, knock it out. I've got the new studs. Make sure your knurl's correct, and the length you want is correct. Now, I use a little bit of silicone. I just put a quick spray on the threads, mostly because you're going to build a lot of friction and heat pulling this in. I just use a small stack of washers. It just makes it a little easier. You can also lube these, which is not a bad idea. Then I take a old regular style lug nut, and I either have lube on the washer or lube on the nut, put it on backwards, and then I just use the impact to draw it in. Now, I've got the impact set, it's probably at about 90 pound-feet. It's not, stretching the stud that way. And then I'm just gonna tighten it up and start pulling it in, and I'll watch it and I'll compare it with the others. And then you can hear a distinct change when it seats in the sound of the impact. All right, done with that one. Go. But I don't need to do the front ones. The front ones are out of a Ford Dana 60 high pinion axle, as you recall, and they already had studs that were a little bit longer than the GM stuff. However, on my black Jeep, the Rock Crawler, my Dana 60 on that one, I've been using the factory 2.5 inch or 2 inch, actually 2 inch on that one, studs that came with the front hubs and came with that axle because I've been using a steel wheel. Now I have recently changed to an aluminum Spider Track wheel, which has a far thicker hub, so I need to increase the length of the stud so that I have a better surface area contact point for all the lug nuts. Now, keep this in mind. Those are a different knurl on the studs for a Dana 60 Chevy than they are for the 14 bolt. The normal stud that you see is got a knurl that is 0.620 or 0.630. And if you're using a brand new hub, you can get away with using those studs, and a lot of people do because these studs are, you know, a whole set for like 25 bucks. You go to the correct knurl, which is a 0.658, which is a little bit thicker, and they grab a whole lot better, but that correct stud and a 3-inch long stud, those are like 150 bucks a set. So a lot of people don't want to use those because of the price difference, but they aren't going to work right in most cases. Like I said, if you're using a new hub, you can get away with that because they'll grab. But eventually, if they do start spinning, you'll have to upgrade to the bigger stud anyway. I myself like doing things right the first time, so pony up the dough and bought the correct studs. So I'm going to do the correct studs on the front of the black Jeep. Now to continue with the fronts, these take a little longer to do studs than the rear, so I think I'm also going to repack the wheel bearings, and I will show you how the Yukon lockout hub goes together. They're a little bit different than your traditional lockout hub in most of these vehicles. So Yukon hub assembly, disassembly is coming up too. First thing I generally like to do is get a clean towel or cloth to set greasy parts on because I really don't want them on my concrete. If you've got long brake hoses, you don't have to worry about the calipers hanging on the hoses. Otherwise, I would say tie them up. Next is the lockout. Now, Yukons are kind of backwards for most hubs. When the spring is relaxed or the hub is in a relaxed position, the unit is engaged. These hubs, just to give you a heads up, the spring in them is about the size of the spring in a Detroit locker or an Eaton locker or Grizzly locker. It has some serious push, and that push engages the mechanical gears just about like the gears that are in a Detroit. These are a serious, this is the only lockout hub I've ever used and not broken. The snap rings in these I call are a full circle. You can get underneath one and then walk it around. Now, I like doing the outer snap ring first because then I can take out pieces, and I also have a little bit of room to hold the hub while I'm removing the inner. Again, this one you can walk around too, but hold the hub because it wants to come out now. There's also a couple of shims. And what those shims do is they help pull the inner yoke away from the housing. I'm going to use a pry bar and just wedge it between the teeth and one of the slots. Also, I guess I better pull that out just so you know. There's also a spacer that goes behind your hub assembly. Generally, once this outer hub retaining nut is loose, they'll come off fairly easy. Now there's a difference between the outer one and the inner one in most cases. The inner lock nut will have a little dowel tit on it for the lock washer. So keep that in mind and try not to mix those up. And when you go back together, you have to make sure to align that inner nut so that it goes into one of the holes on your retaining washer. And the hub's off. I'm going to take a few minutes and clean this up a little bit because I'm going to repack the bearings while I'm here. You can see I've got this on a chunk of wood right here. Now, I don't want to take all the lug nuts out because I want them aligned and I want that hub sandwiched with the rotor. If you're changing the rotor, it's a different story, but the way I'm doing this will make it a little easier for me to draw these in or hammer them in either way. So I'm going to do 4. Now, I flip it over, and I'm going to hammer it with the wood. You really don't want to hammer the face of your hub surface. You'll end up with issues. You'll warp them, deform them, snap rings won't fit right. It'd be hard getting that gear in and out. I just quick spray. And I hit the knurl with it, but I like that on my threads as well. You can tell how tight these fit or how loose they fit. The best way to do these is actually with a press, but I want to show a couple examples. That way you want to be able to either feel or see that seat. All right. 2 down, 6 to go on this side. I'm going to go ahead and knock the seal out. Half the time I destroy them, half the time I don't. Do have a paper towel under here. But the other thing I wanted to show you, if you can wiggle, you can hear that. That means the studs are not 100% seated. So I am going to go ahead and take my threads and pull them the rest of the way in, just to get rid of, I mean, it ain't much, but not much means your wheel could come loose. Now that these are really close to being seated, it won't take much to finish seating them. Packing bearings, not a lot of rocket science. You just push the grease up until it starts coming out of the races in the cage. Now, you don't have to clean these in solvents and do a lot of prep work to pack the bearings unless you have contaminants, water's gotten in there, something of that sort. If that's the case, then yeah, clean them, blow them out with air. But otherwise, you can just wipe the surface off, pack them with grease, and as this grease is coming out, you can see the old grease is getting pushed out and it's just kind of going into my hand. And I'll dispose of that. Once you've gone around the bearing a couple times, or once, and you've got all, you know you've gotten it all packed, then you're done. And you can throw a little bit on the surface too. That's the inner bearing. The outer bearing is done the same way again. Just wiping the old grease off the outside and around the top. Make sure you don't have anything. Now, it is a good idea to inspect, make sure you haven't gotten a bunch of heat marks, pitting, things like that. If you do, replace the bearings. You can see that without having to solvent clean them. I try to avoid solvent cleaning bearings unless I absolutely have to, like if water's gotten in them and contaminated them. The reason being is if you leave solvent in there, it can break down the grease, and then you have a bigger issue. When you remove all the lubricating properties of your grease, it isn't going to keep your bearings from seizing. I do have a bearing packer. I don't use it very often. I actually prefer this because I can feel the bearing. I can see the grease coming through. And I know when I'm done. Seal-wise, I could get away with using the old seal if I want to. Seals are like $7, and there's a pretty good chance that once you force it out, you've warped it. So I'd recommend just put a new seal in instead of dealing with the headache. Yeah, lube the seal. Make sure you read your seal so you know which direction it goes. The spring is on this side in the gap. That faces your seal. Clean the spindle, clean your seal surface. I always seat the inner bearing as such first, then I fish the outer bearing in. And like I said earlier, you can probably see this has a little nipple on it that goes out so it can lock into that washer. I actually wanted to get the socket, not just to make this go faster, but just to give people an example of how tight to do a wheel bearing. If you looked up the specs, they're only about 20 inch-pounds of torque, but what I do is I snug them up and I'll spin the hub a few times. Now you can also, what a lot of people will do, is they'll over torque it, spin it, and then they'll back it off a little bit. I find I just, 15 or so inch-pounds, and that's all you need. The trick on these is the washer. It's keyed on the spindle, so you line it up with a key point, and then push it in, and you can rock it if it is not lined up correctly. If it's not lined up correctly, you have to pull the washer off. And you remember which side. This side was in because I can see where the grease pulled. You can try flipping it over and see if it lines up. In most cases, it will not, which means take your hub socket and just go at just a hair tighter and then see if it lines up. Voila, it lined up. So I can push the flat washer and there's no rocking or movement in the washer at all. It's flush against that other one. Now the outer hub nut, you actually tighten, and there is a torque spec on it. I usually just go tight. And again, you don't have to be a gorilla. It's just a jam nut is all this is. And then make sure your hub is smooth, doesn't have any slop to it. And this is also another good time to check your rotor. Make sure all your studs are tight again. Now that the hub's seated, bearings are where they should be. Again, you don't have to really spend a lot of time cleaning the springs and the guts for the hubs unless you think there's a problem somewhere. What you don't want to forget are little pieces like this shim that goes between the spindle and the back of the hub. Now, the way these work, which I may as well show this, you can see these have teeth. These are just like a Detroit locker. And those teeth grab, and that spring, this spring is what pushes those together. When you release the hub, these little tabs push the back of the hub so it's just a little bit apart like this, and it'll allow it to free spin. This is what makes these hubs so darn strong. Now, I put these together a little different than a lot of people. I will just put the center section in. Gotta get that outer lined up. And just FYI, you'll get quite a bit of spline showing. And I put my shims in. Now you can use things like vice grips to hold these open. And then I'll walk the snap ring around it. It's hard doing this with a camera on, I'll tell you. So don't force these snap rings, just walk them. Now, the reason I put the inner on first, then I can make sure my outer seats and releases easy when engaged and disengaged. Another thing to kind of keep in mind too, there's hubs that are, I call them wet or dry. And wow, there's a little warpage to that. And when I say wet, a wet hub will have grease, and a dry hub you just put in without grease, just whatever lubricant it came with. These particular hubs are wet. They do have grease in them. So again, you got to push the hub in and start walking the snap ring around. So I usually try to get it on one side. And it didn't go. Starting to go. And you can test it, make sure it works. And just line up. If you want it on release or engage. And I like, most of the time on a hub, I will install the hub in the disengaged position. But on these hubs, these Yukon hubs, I remount the hub while it's engaged. Get a couple make sure it engages and disengages before I put the rest of them in, make sure I'm lined up accordingly. And FYI, you don't have to put these in like a gorilla. Snug works just fine. Now on these Yukon hubs, mine have been bashed in and beat to death enough times because my old wheels didn't have much back spacing and they hit rocks a lot. So I've got a couple little dings and stuff in mine. So there are times when makes it hard to engage and disengage. You can always use pliers there. All right, I already put the caliper on. Something you may want to do, some people do, some people don't. I like doing this. I put just a little bit of lubricant on the threads. I don't worry about them coming loose because there's lubricant on them, but what I don't want to have happen, since part of this stud's going to stick out of the lug nut, I don't want them to rust and then pull the thread. So if there's a little bit of grease or silicone on there, it'll allow water to disperse. You can also paint them, but the paint comes off when you put a lug nut on. So this side's done. Throw the wheel on and go to the other. double check your torque, drive it like 10 miles. Check your torque again, and then go a day or two and check your torque another time. You want to do that anytime you replace lug studs in case you didn't really get them seated and you thought you did. It might save you a whole lot of walking time. All right, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I do appreciate it. I think we'll go do some four-wheeling now. Test out these smaller tires that I've put on here. Drop on your passenger too, so keep it frank. Easy, easy. Got the back end coming out that's going to hit. There. So far. See it in the mirror? That's not the rubber. stuck and cattywampus. She put a dent in every single panel of her truck. And we drove her up out there. That was my latest video where we put the... I don't get a lot of videos of my Jeep, but here's one with no... it. Looks like you're through now.
Where are you gonna go, Cameron?
I don't know.
Hard left, dig. Or that way.
I'd almost back up and come hard this way. Back up first and then turn. Just back up. Right there.
You don't think I can make it through that way?
It's so leany over. I don't know. From this angle, it doesn't look good, but I'd back up a little bit farther and you get your back tire on the corner.
We got some steering to work on, Dave.
Okay. Okay, now hard driver.
Ain't no hard about it.
It looks really hard.
One more back up.
Close, we got about a half a tire on it.
You can get it off or something. Okay.
I always taught Vicky and the kids, if they're riding past, to reach over and grab my seatbelt, because you'll pull yourself to the center of the vehicle. It's the safest place to be. And I can always tell when she gets nervous because my seatbelt gets real tight.
Yes, that's how I. Yeah.
His is too. If it'll start climbing, it'll pivot it right around.
I'm going to climb it. I'm going to slide right around it.
That's fine too. If it pivots you, it'll work. It's coming up now. Just keep it turned.
It works.
It'll work.
Nicely done, sir.
See? Perfect.
That steering's making an awful lot of noise. It is.
That's a good line right there. It'll slide you right where you probably need to be.
Good, I didn't even know it was you. I haven't seen you that rig yet. I take that back. I think I saw it on a picture you posted last night or the night before or whatever. Yeah. Awesome.
That would be the first time. This is the second.
Ah.
It's small tires, big hood. Boy, I sure did.
Oh man.
Not bad.
Different ball game, huh?
And a clutch. Yeah.
I hear you there.
Go passenger.
Whenever you're ready. Pat?
Yeah.
I'm just here for the
Yep.
camaraderie.
That'll get your rear end where you want it when you get up there. The rear end's going to start coming. It's almost there. There it is. Perfect.
Watch out, you guys, just in case.
Throttle out is not a good idea. Dana, come here. Bad idea.
What is? What am I hitting right now?
That's good. Yeah.
You're gonna have to back out.
Turn driver. Just a little bit. As you come down.
Putting you right in the right place. It's going to slide you just like Cameron's did until that tire gets to the notch. be up higher, I think. See if you can get your front end to turn to the right and go up higher.
My tire's getting underneath back here.
It's going. It's not going.
Can you go back any more, Pat? If you can go back, you'll have it.
You can.
Now, yes. Beautiful.
I'm going to get too much of a bike fall there. My back end's pretty far over.
Well, hopefully it's gonna move you over. If not, we'll yank you off.
Come on.
Go Patagonias.
Oh, Pat, Pat.
Get up there.
I'm going to end up.
He just says, I'm gonna end up.
I don't know where to go. No, I don't know.
Oh, you're in your boat here?
Go a little past me. Yeah. And I want to keep my back in front of me. I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, I think you're pretty good there. Hopefully you'll just straddle it.
Driver. 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 Keep it just like that. Driver.
I'm going to put going back.
You're wedged pretty good on that right tire.
Purple again, just like it did. Yeah, maybe not. You'll
Keep it hard right.
yeah, just keep working this way. I'm on it again. That's exactly where I've been.
Oh, okay.
Just, yeah, get your front end over as much as you can.
If your rear picks it up, it'll go. It's going.
You got it.
Now, once it's up, straighten it out a little bit. tire placement.
Still think if I could stay higher.
Yeah,
I
but
can't get my rear.
down there is pulling you back though. It's-
Go. Right there. We'll try it on past you. And just stay.
Back up and bump it! Can you back up and bump it? More throttle, less direction. Works every time.
I like your front drive line.
That's Ethan special there.
It's getting high.
I like it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's so darn close.
It's alright.
Just bump it over, it'll be fine. But if you decide you want to pull pistons and stuff like that, then you'll have to take it.